Welcome, everybody. We're live here on Facebook. We had a little detour on connecting, but we are up and running now. And I'd like to welcome you all to WonHeart TV. We're starting off with today talking about grief with my friend, good friend, Amanda Sherlock. Welcome, Amanda. How are you today?
Thanks, Joelyn. I'm great. Thank you. It's great to be here, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. Amanda, there's so much grief around all of this today. We've got so many things in the world that are complicating life, so to
Yes.
speak. And what that does so much of the time is it pushes us into uncomfortable places that I believe affect our emotional state, um, our well-being, our bodies, all kinds of things. So I thought I'd just reach out to you because you are one of my fellow grief recovery method specialists. Am I saying that right?
Certified, yes. You missed the word certified or certifiable. Certified grief recovery specialist. Yes. Well
Yes.
done.
Can you give me a little definition of first of all of like what that is exactly? That
Yeah, so the grief recovery method has been around since John James started working with his own grief in 1977. The first thing he did was to write a book, and after that, started having groups that people could go to, and then beyond that, started training people like me, householders, people in the community, to be able to moderate these groups. So, from 1977, 80 to now, there are thousands of people like me. The Grief Recovery Handbook has 700,000 copies in print.
wow.
It's a tremendous movement. It's also evidence-based, which means that there's been a study at Kent State University to show the efficacy of this, and it has been proven to be an effective way of dealing with someone's grief. But to your point, though, there is so much grief, and it's the COVID has just sort of piled on another layer on top. We all walk around with grief, whether it's it's left over from childhood, even things like losing a teddy bear. I remember losing my brand new yellow red shovel that I somehow dropped on the beach. I mean, that was a long time ago, but I still remember that. So all of those grief things just pile on and pile on. And now we're at a point with COVID where our whole lives have changed because we can't do what we used to do. Even if it's just going out to Starbucks and sitting and having a cup of coffee,
I know.
gone. And there's grief in that.
Sure. Yeah, and a lot of it, we think of it as I was actually looked up a little something in psychology today, and a Dr. Mendoza from September 19th had stated a lot of times we know grief affects our emotions, anger, joy, whatever. It puts us in this place. I remember I used to have bouts of anger, had no idea really where it came from. But
Mm-hmm.
on top of that, I didn't know that, and of course it does. It affects your digestion. I know it did with me when I had a lot of grief in 2006. Your respiratory, your breathing, your immune system, your blood pressure, which can lead to heart ailments. And if you've already got something, Amanda, some kind of physical ailment, it looks like this can all acerbate it or contribute even on top of it, like you said. Do you
Yeah.
think that's true?
Well, that's entirely possible. I mean, in the Grief Recovery Institute, we don't talk about the mind-body aspect in terms of what happens with our own bodies. But as you know, Jolene, I have done this grief recovery program in the men's prison. And speaking of anger, um, one of the inmates who completed the course said, "It made me realize that my very first grief incident affected my entire adult life because I didn't know how to process my loss."
Ooh,
Wow. So I mean, and that's not just anger that's caused by or results in some kind of violence, but it's just anger that we have. Road rage, for example. I mean, that's a perfect example of the kind of thing that can bubble up as a result of grief.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of times the bubbling up can come in all kinds of different forms.
Yeah,
And I remember when I took the grief recovery class back in 2007, and I have to admit it saved my life.
yeah.
Saved my life. I remember that people tend to numb themselves out with all kinds of isms like alcoholism and drugs, and I heard sex and gambling, all these different things, and we wonder why we're just kind of moping along in life, you know?
Well, yeah, and there's another one. It's called Netflix.
Oh, well, we're kind of using that right now, aren't we,
Yeah,
in this time? A lot of us, I didn't even think of that.
yeah. I mean, it's so, and shopping. I mean, Amazon, whether it's you're buying stuff or streaming, I mean, that is a perfect example. And that's not to say if we're suffering a loss, we shouldn't do it. But one of the things we look at in the grief recovery workshop is what we call short-term energy relieving behaviors. And they're fine as long as they're short-term. Like during COVID, yes, maybe I'm watching a bit more Netflix than usual, but after it's done, I don't want to have that habit of Netflix. I don't want to have that habit of ice cream before bed or an extra drink or whatever it happens to be. That's where the short-term energy relieving behavior turns into a long-term problem.
Mm.
So you're absolutely right. Yes.
Well, would you say that grief comes in possible stages of our life or anything due to that?
Well, so one of the things, thanks, that's a really great question to clarify. So one of the things at the Grief Recovery Institute is we do not believe in the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross stages for a number of reasons. One is that when she formulated those, she was really talking about people who were dying. It was their grief about their own losing their own life.
Sure.
And so everybody heard about it and they think, oh, good, now I've got something to hang on to. And my personal belief, this isn't grief recovery per se, but this is my personal belief, is that the reason the stages have held such a life of their own is because people who are hurting want to know where they are. Am I done yet? Oh gosh, I'm in this stage. I've only got 2 more stages to go and then I'll be done and I'll feel better. But actually they're really not accurate, because when, one of the stages is denial. Well, no one's going to deny that their mother has cancer. No one's going to deny that their dog has died. It's the reality. So denial is not, in our grief recovery opinion, or the whole Kubler-Ross stages are not really things that we work with. And I think, I've heard people say that they'd be better off to have no information than bad information, especially things like give it time, replace the loss, those sorts of things. Those are quite unhelpful.
I have to agree. So much of the time, we don't know what to say when someone has passed, or and the worst thing you can say is, "Oh, this too shall pass." These common phrases, because in our country and maybe beyond, we don't deal with grief very well at all. In fact, in my class of 8 to 10 women, there was one guy, and
Yeah.
talk about the seriousness of teaching grief to everyone and how to deal with it instead of storing it up. We've got men ready to explode, don't you think? And this,
Yeah, and the irony is the book was written by 2 guys.
yeah, that's true.
That's the irony. And when I go into the prison, I go, hey guys, this isn't like frou girly stuff. This is a book that was written for you by some men. And so I think it's, men are taught to, be tough,
Mhm.
and the other thing, one of the myths in the book is be strong for others. So, a the father dies and someone says to the son who's 10, you got to be strong for your mom, got to be strong for your mom. So there you have it. He's got a lifetime. Or you've got to be strong for your siblings. You're the eldest. He's got a lifetime set up of trying to be strong for other people when really he has no ability to take care of himself and to take care of his own needs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really heartbreaking for our men out there for sure, with compressing all their emotions constantly, and
Yeah.
they're bound to come out, and not in healthy ways, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
that goes along with females too. I know that I had a long-standing anger problem that was just bubbling all the time, and not till I took this class did I really realize that the anger was coming from a grief long ago,
That's right.
multiple. So, yeah, that was interesting. And so I know this class has a segment goes in like 8 weeks,
Yeah.
once a week. I remember when I had my multitude of griefs, was over losing my dog of 18 years. My
Oh,
sister suddenly died.
oh,
My brother committed suicide. Talk about stuffing it all and not
yeah.
knowing where to get rid of it. And then my relationship ended. I know that I was a mess. And when I got in the class, Amanda, the funny thing was I wanted to be healed right now.
Yeah.
And 8 weeks seemed so long, but when I went through that program, that is again the grief recovery method.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I now understand why the process is so slow. Is there a reason, in your opinion, why it you take it real slow like that?
Well, there is a 3-day program that people can take, and that's what I took the first time
Oh, okay.
when actually my dog died, and that was one of the losses that was the most recent loss that sort of caused me to like have the scale tip. There is a 3-day workshop that people can take. It's done, in various parts of the country and the world, so you can do it quickly. But the reason that the 8-week community program works so well is because it's educational in nature. And so what we're doing is um, we're taking a look at what we've learned and sort of undoing. We're examining the things that we have learned in the past, the things that haven't been helpful, and then realizing that we've been operating on false information. The other thing that I think as the facilitator, and I've seen this happen time and time again, is that people come in week one and they're sort of sitting there frozen and scared, absolutely with cause, because often they've been beaten up in other grief situations because
Mm.
they go around and around and never really get anywhere. And then, so week by week, everybody sort of gets to know each other. They feel a little more comfortable. And so it's part of the whole feeling safe. And I see my role in the grief recovery workshops is just to make sure people have a safe place.
Mm.
So by the time they start to really look at the deep work, for example, looking at all of the losses that they've experienced through their lives, now they're starting to feel a little more comfortable with each other and trusting each other to not hurt their heart. Because
Oh, yes.
as we all know, when we're out in the world and I say, like my dog died, someone says, oh well, you can get another,
Yeah.
you know, which is not helpful. And so one of the things that we learn in those first few weeks is we're not going to say that to each other. So we build this beautiful group of people who care, who are strangers, but who care about each other in a very deep way.
Yes, and that is one of the biggest griefs I think happening is we're missing our community.
Yes,
We can't see our families. We can't go out to dinner. We can't go out and exercise and hike and all the wonderful things that we humans crave. We
yes,
crave communication. Oh, so well said.
yeah,
The worst thing is to isolate,
yes,
be alone for
yes,
sure.
yes,
I know I struggled with that for laying in a fetal position basically for probably well over 6 months, couldn't eat, lost a lot of weight, but I don't think it was a healthy way. My adrenal glands were off the chart.
Mhm.
Um,
But by the same token, though, for someone who's experienced a lot of unhelpful and unkind comments, isolating is the best protection.
oh,
You know, I mean, you can't fault that. But there's a time to get out. And, you know, if people know about the Grief Recovery Institute, I really welcome them to, you know, learn more. But I can completely understand why people do isolate, because it's an unsafe world out there if you've had a loss, as
right.
you very well know. So you just stay inside, and because that's where you're comfortable.
Well, we definitely don't have days off when we're in grief. We're working. It's
No,
they don't take that into consideration a lot of the times. You know, so do what can people do to feel better? Can you give them? I'm not sure you're teaching any classes at this moment.
no. Well, actually, I had to stop. I was on week 3 out of 8, and we had to stop when the COVID started. So I think the one thing that people can do is to really name it. You know, name what it is. I miss seeing my family. I miss going to Starbucks. I miss going to the gym. You know, I whatever it is that they miss, just to kind of think about all the things that they miss, and just to identify it really helps.
Yeah.
And then if they have a friend who they trust, to just say, I miss this. And the other thing that we do in grief recovery is we put people in partners and trios, and the listening people are there to just listen. They're not to fix or criticize or help or anything, just to listen. So if somebody have a friend who will just agree to just listen to them about the things that they miss, and then they've been heard. Because one of the things that you know from having done this workshop is that being heard is healing. And so that would be the one thing that I would suggest, is to be able to find someone who you can say, could you just listen to me? And just whatever I say, I've said, and it's out, but I just need to be heard. And
Yeah.
that is just a good start.
Yeah. For the listeners out there, by any chance, I know you have done this and moderated at the prisons,
Yeah.
and both male and female, or
No, only in the men's prison at this point.
okay. Um, I was wondering if there's any way that Heart can help you, or I will definitely share your information if you're willing. If there's some folks out there, I've seen so many people on Facebook, good friends of mine, having a great deal of loss during this time, whether it was COVID or not. Mothers and fathers are still dying out there of
Yeah.
other ailments. Is there a way that they could reach out to you? Are you available?
Yes, I'm certainly available through Facebook. As I say, I'm not facilitating anything right now, but I can certainly put them in touch with people around the country there are some people who are doing some one-to-ones on Zoom. So I could certainly put people in touch with that. Yeah.
Okay. That would be wonderful. I know. And then why is this one last thing? Why is this so successful, do you think? Why healing our grief? Why would we want to do that when we could when we
Well,
could keep drinking, or we could keep,
yeah.
whatever, running from it?
I think at some point people just get to the stage in their life where they go, I can't deal with this pain anymore. I mean, I know for me, when my dog died, I had just been trying to find some relief from the pain that I was experiencing. And I just knocked on all the doors and called all the phone numbers. This was before the internet. Called everybody I could find to help me get through this and get complete, as we would say in grief recovery, get complete with our loss, with my loss. And the other thing too is that having these tools in my back pocket is really helpful, because since that time, I've lost both my parents, I've been divorced, all kinds of other losses that I've had, that have this method has really helped me move through to completion on those relationships.
Right. Wonderful. 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 Well, we're working with you as well, Amanda. Would you like to talk briefly about something you've just created? I'm so excited, and One Heart's
I
going to
would
help you out.
I would love to. Thank you. So, um, for the listeners that don't know, both Joelyn and I have uh, been working in the prisons, and well, I've been volunteering in the prisons anyway. And so, one of the things that I spent 10 years trying to achieve is to get this very same 8-week grief recovery program into the men's prison in Chowchilla, where I had been going since 2004. 2006. And so I have created a nonprofit with a thanks to WonHeart. So if anyone wants to donate to help get 10 of the male inmates in Chowchilla certified, just like I was, to be able to facilitate these workshops in the prison and also help pay for the books and the printed materials and those sorts of things. With COVID, things have changed a little bit, but my intention is still to find a way to have 10 inmates trained to do this in 2021 so that they can be on hand when any kind of loss comes in. What I do know is that every single day, there's a call that comes into the prison where the warden or a chaplain has to tell an inmate that a loved one on the outside has died.
Oh, yes.
And in addition to the grief that they already are experiencing, that's just one more grief to not be able to be with their families at this time. So any donations of any size are most welcome. You can click on the donate button on WonHeart, and then you put a note in, and it says you can put in living after loss, or if you can't remember that, you can just put prison.
Great.
So
Wonderful. We love helping our beloved sisters and brothers out there that are making a difference, and you definitely do, Amanda.
Thank you.
I so appreciate you coming on today. I hope for you all out there that maybe there's something that sparked you. Maybe there's some emotions that you're feeling deep down, and maybe you just didn't realize that maybe this has something to do with grief, multitudes of grief. We have so many layers of that. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. So many layers. Just for me, losing Sears Roebuck is a big loss.
There you go. There was people on Facebook stating that. You bet.
Just that. Just naming it though, as I said earlier, naming it helps.
Right. Because we all grew up with that, us older folks, and the catalog. We used to order things from the catalog. Very well said. So many griefs out there. Once again, I want you to check in with yourselves, check in with your heart. Take a look at oneheartinfo.org. I will be putting this up on our YouTube WonHeart TV YouTube station. So if you want to revisit this, and also Facebook on WonHeart. So thank you again, Amanda. I'm going to say bye-bye to everybody on Facebook, and stay with me just a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
Thank y'all. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.